Hello and welcome to Letters from a Father to His Daughter. These letters were written by Jawaharlal Nehru to his daughter Indira from the confines of prison. I am your host, Giribala Joshi. In the previous letter, we learned how the priests and the kings became powerful and exploited the peasants and laborers. Today I'll read the next 3 letters as these are short letters. In these letters, Nehru recaps the previous letters. Letter 26. A look back. Are you not quite tired of my letters? I think you deserve a rest. Well, I shall not write to you anything new for some time. I want you just to think over what we have already done. We have rushed through millions of years in a few letters. Starting from the time when the earth was a bit of the sun, we saw how it separated and slowly cooled down. The moon then shot off. For long ages there was no life. Then during millions and millions of years, have you any idea how long a time a million years is? Life grew very slowly. It is enormously difficult to be able to form an idea of millions of years. You are only 10 years old, and how grown up and old you are. You are a jeune fille, n'est-ce pas? A young lady. 100 years to you is a terribly long time. And then 1,000, and 1,000,000, which is 1,000 times 1,000. I am afraid we cannot get this in our little heads properly. We imagine that we are so important, and little things annoy us and worry us. But what are these little happenings in the long history of the world? It does us good to read and learn something of these vast periods of history, because we will not then worry about little things much. Let us remember of the tremendously long time during which there was no life at all, and then of the long time when there were only animals in the sea. There is no man anywhere on earth. The animals come and roam about for millions of years with no man to shoot and kill them, and when at last man comes, he is a puny, tiny little thing, the weakest of animals. Slowly, in thousands of years, he becomes stronger and cleverer till he becomes the master animal on earth. All the other animals become his servants and slaves to do as he tells them. Then we come to the growth of civilization. We have seen the early beginnings of it. We shall try to follow it in later times. We have not got millions of years to go through now. In our letters, we have arrived at a period which was only about 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. But we know more about these 4,000 years than about the millions of years that went before. The history and growth of man really took place during these 4,000 years. You will read about this history a great deal when you grow up. I shall only write a little about it, just to give you some idea of what has happened to man in this little world of ours. End of letter 26. Letter 27. Pictures of fossil fishes. I am sending some picture postcards. I hope you will like them better than my long and dull letters. These cards are pictures of fossil fishes in the South Kensington Museum in London. You must have seen these fossils there. Anyway, the pictures will give you some idea of what these fossils of ancient fishes are like. Fossils are, as I have told you, the remains of ancient animals and plants, which we find in rocks and other places. The soft parts of the animals did not last, but the hard and bony parts have survived for long ages. Most of them got covered up with soft mud at the bottom of the sea and were thus protected. The soft mud became hard in the course of time, and the seafloor was raised up and became dry land. So we find these fossil remains on dry land today. Some of these fossils have been shown in the pictures as they have been found in the rocks. They are not very clear. 2 are models, that is, they have been made up to resemble the real fossils. One of the fossils merely shows the teeth of the fish. I think the most interesting are numbers G24 and G27. These show clearly how the fishes have left their mark on the rock, and from these marks, millions of years afterwards, we can tell that they existed. Keep these picture cards, with the paper giving a description of them, in the envelope, so that they may not get mixed up with others. End of letter 27. Letter 28. Fossils and Ruins. I have not written to you for a long time. In my last 2 letters, we were looking back on the ancient periods which we have been considering in our letters. I sent you some picture postcards of fossil fishes to give you some idea of what these fossils were like. In Mussoorie, when we met, I showed you pictures of other fossils. You may remember especially the fossil reptiles. Reptiles are usually animals which crawl, like the snakes, lizards, crocodiles, and turtles which we have today. The reptiles in old days belonged to the same family, but were very different and were very big. You will remember the enormous brutes we saw in the South Kensington Museum. One of them was 30 or 40 feet long. There was also a kind of frog bigger than a man, and a tortoise almost as big. Enormous bats used to fly about, and one animal, the iguanodon, when it stood up on its feet, was as big as a small tree. You also saw fossils of old plants. There were beautiful fern markings in the rock, and leaves and palms. Long after the reptiles came the mammals or the animals which suckle or give milk to their young. Most of the animals we see around us, and we ourselves, are also mammals. The mammals of old times were not very different from some of our animals today. They were often bigger, but not so big as the reptiles used to be. There were elephants with enormous tusks and huge bears. You also saw remains of fossil man. These were not very interesting as they were usually bones and skulls. More interesting were the flint instruments which early men used to make. I also showed you some fine pictures of Egyptian tombs and mummies. Some of these, you will remember, were very beautiful. On the wooden coffins were painted long stories of people. Very interesting were the wall paintings from the Egyptian tombs at Thebes. You also saw pictures of the ruins of palaces and temples at Thebes in Egypt. Huge buildings they were with enormous pillars. Near Thebes is the Colossus of Memnon, an enormous statue. There were also pictures of the ruined temples and buildings at Karnak in Upper Egypt. Even from these ruins you can form some idea of how mighty the old Egyptians were as builders. They could not have built these great temples and palaces unless they knew a great deal of engineering. We have now finished our brief look back. In our next letter, we shall go ahead. End of letter 28. In his next letter, Nehru discusses Indo-Aryan migration theory.
On this channel, you will find several videos related to Nehru. I am Giribala Joshi. Please like my videos so that together we can spread factual, historical information among more people.